Hey, welcome to All About the Game. My name is Todd Blyleven. I'm joined by my co-host, Mike Micucci. How you doing, Mike?
What's up, Todd? Another
Uh,
week.
Another week. I
Show
know.
12?
What's that?
Is this show 12?
This is show 12, episode 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Yes.
today we have Andre David, our
Uh,
special guest, hitting coordinator and coach with in the Royals organization, been a Pro Bowl for 40 plus years.
yeah.
Super excited to talk to him about hitting.
Yeah. Good background. I've had the pleasure of meeting him when I was with Texas. The complexes are kind of connected, where you share the field, the major league field, and then there's one complex on one side with the 7 minor league fields, and then another complex. So Texas and Kansas City are kind of connected. So our paths crossed many, many times over there, and a great baseball mind. And I'm really looking forward to getting into hitting and talking to him.
Yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of young kids and coaches get an opportunity to listen and learn. And
Cool.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, how's Mike Micucci baseball doing, and your clothes? Dylan keeps wearing your shirts everywhere, your hats.
Yeah.
I'm seeing stuff pop around. So how's that going?
It's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean, there's it kind of goes when you launch it. The new stuff comes in, you get a bunch of stuff right away, and then it dies down a little bit, and then we'll have something coming, different colors or whatever for the fall or whatever. So it's going okay.
Yeah, the colors are awesome.
Yeah, we kind of like these. They were kind of good for the summertime. The hats came out good, and the hoodies are the big one. It's like a t-shirt. It's the new style going on nowadays, and yeah, I know. I see a bunch of kids wearing it around. Actually, I know one of the kids that was doing lessons that I was doing lessons with wore a hat to his memorial high school tryout. And a bunch of the kids on the team were like, hey, he was our coach this summer. And like this young freshman kid who was probably nervous, like he couldn't believe, all of a sudden got kind of taken in by the brotherhood and taken care of. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing how that can happen.
Yeah.
Well, so remind everybody where we can get your stuff, because it really is.
So I think the best way to do it is probably just email me at mikemicuccibaseball@gmail.com. I mean, we do have a website, but the business is still kind of a work in progress. And we're just, I mean, going through it with the Scout Hub, which you guys are launching stuff all the time, but you know how hard that is to kind of develop. But if you kind of just email me at mikemicuccibaseball@gmail.com, address and what you're looking for, we'll get it and ship it out to you.
Yeah, and we'll set some stuff up with the Scout Hub too, where we can give some viewers an opportunity to purchase there maybe, and give you another outlet for it, because it really is cool stuff. The brand is awesome. So
yeah.
All right. Well, Andre's waiting in the waiting room. You ready to get the show started?
Yeah, bring him in. It's going to be great.
All right, let's go. Here we go. Hey, welcome back to All About the Game. My name is Todd Blyleven, joined by my co-host, Mike Micucci. And today we have a very special guest, Andre David, AD. Thanks for joining us.
What's up, AD?
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so Andre, Mike and I were talking about you before, and for our audience that's listening, obviously a long-time career in Major League Baseball and Pro Ball. I think you started your path in Southern California, Chatsworth High School, and, ventured into minor league baseball, and then, now been an amazing coach and hitting coordinator and things. So can you give us just kind of an overview of where you started in high school, how you got into pro ball. I want to know what it was like when you put that first uni on with the Minnesota Twins, you know, and what that felt like as a big leaguer going through your journey.
Yeah, I started in at Chatsworth High School, played there. Then I went to LA Valley Junior College, where I had the privilege of having two pretty good college coaches, and Dave Snow and George Horton, who most of you probably know. Then I went on to Fullerton and played for Augie Garrido for 2 years.
Wow.
And we actually won the national championship in '79. In 1980, I was drafted in the 8th round by Minnesota. Went to high A out of college in '80, and in '84, 1984, I got the call to go to the big leagues. And was fortunate enough, my parents were able to fly to Detroit to see my first game. It was the first game of a doubleheader against Jack Morris, and I was a wreck, I have to tell you. You talk about nerves, and that was in '84 was big because they had the wave going at that time. It started in baseball. So needless to say, wow, that was, instead of 3,000 or 4,000, I'm looking at 30,000 people in the stands from the minor leagues to the major leagues. So I was hitting 7th in the lineup, and Randy Bush in the 2nd inning was on 3rd base with 1 out, and, situational hitting right away. And I do recall stepping into the box and putting my back foot in the box, and it was shaking. I had to step back out and reset. He threw the first pitch, was a fastball. I have to tell you, I fouled it back. I felt pretty good. Then he threw me a split. Back then he had that split going. I swung and missed. Now I'm 0-2, and I'm struggling now. I'm thinking I got to put this ball in play. He threw another fastball up and away, and then the next pitch, another split, and he hung it, and I hit a home run in my first major league at-bat. Wow. So I was the 49th player to hit a home run in his first major league at-bat. But I think there's about 70 today, maybe more. I'm not sure where it's at, but only 4 never hit another one, and I was one of those. So I hit both ends of the spectrum in one swing. So
what's nice about that? You don't get the ball.
Yeah, I got the ball. They got it from the fan in Detroit, and I gave them tickets to the rest of the series. In fact, I have it right here in my office here.
That's awesome.
Wow.
84 Tigers, they were powerhouses back then.
They won it that year in '84. Yeah.
They started out something crazy, like 37-4, 37.
Yeah, they were just, and Jack Morris, he was, when I was coaching in the big leagues with Kansas City, who I've been with for the last 22 years, we talked about it. He's doing broadcasting, and we have a little joke, and so it was really good to do something off the winningest pitcher in the '90s.
Yeah.
So that was just remarkable. And then after done playing, toward the end of my career, I got into coaching in 1990. 90 to 94, I started with the Mets because I ended my career in the minor leagues with the Tidewater Tides, which was AAA with the Mets. And actually that same year, Randy Neiman, Clint Hurdle, John Gibbons, and myself all retired, and we got into coaching.
Wow.
And we're all on the same team in Tidewater. So, and got into coaching in 90. The strike hit in 94. So we were all on standby. I took a couple years off. I went back to school, started raising a family, and Ron Johnson and George Brett convinced me to get back in the game. And fall of '97, I signed with the Kansas City Royals, and I've been with them since. And from a minor league manager, hitting coordinator many years, couple stints in the big leagues, coaching. And presently, I just stay with the young clubs and extended, and spend a lot of time with them, developing them, not just mechanically, but more importantly, understanding the game mentally, what it takes, day in and day out. And I really enjoy working with the young kids, and being realistic, it's toward the end of my career. You know, I'm 62, a few more years, and, you know, we'll see. But I really like to make an impact on the young kids today. And that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
What a
That's
great story, you know, just, yeah, the, you know, being with developing the foundation in player development, starting with the kids when they enter, and just, it's really hard nowadays. They don't play a lot of baseball. They don't practice a lot. Everything's so structured, so organized. And if it's not an organized practice, or if it's not something structured, they're not out there just figuring it out on their own. So there's a lot of things that they don't really know when it comes to the game. So it's really hard.
Yeah, I remember when we came through, you know, we played even in instructional league. You know, back then in Arizona, it was 6 weeks. In Florida, it was 8 weeks. And you played games Monday through Saturday. Now it's more structured, more development, more understanding the plan and the approach. I mean, games are important, but the way the game has, you know, changed, I think it's benefited players to understand how important it is to prepare, you know, and hopefully make 7 o'clock a little easier. You know, I think there's better arms maybe than when I played. You know, I think the average fastball was 88 when I played, 89 maybe in the 80s. Now it's what, 93, 94, and they can do a little bit more. So, you know, and I think the players are bigger and stronger today. We know more about the body. But I really believe, especially Mike, you know, you were a coordinator, those young kids, you got to have the right people down there coaching those young kids and getting them through things and adversity, and how to be resilient in what they're doing. And, you know, us coaches, you know, we have to be on top of our game, and see everything, see the players for who they are. Everybody's different, and learn to work in that, you know.
Without a doubt.
well,
Without a doubt. I mean, there's so much that you can teach these young kids. I mean, you're dealing with Latin players that are coming over for the first time, that, you know what their educational background's like and how their learning process is. You're dealing with some young high school kids from all over the country, you know, and then you're dealing with college kids. So you have this mix, and you can't treat everybody the same. They all have to be treated differently, you know, to figure out how you're going to get the most out of them.
Yeah, and I do remember when I got into coaching, I talked to Tom Kelly, who, you know, I would say Augie Garrido from the college level, and had an impact on my career, and probably Tom Kelly the most. And I got into coaching in 90, and I called him and talked to him a little bit about it. And he said, remember 3 things. He said, remember the philosophy and direction of the organization. It may change, but learn it, understand it, you know. And 2, as normal, always be on time. And 3, never fall in love with a player. See every player for who he is and where he comes from. And when you, especially the 3rd one, because everybody's different, you're going to have to approach everybody different, and you need to learn as much as you can about that kid. And I've pretty much stayed with those 3 my whole career.
And the last one kind of works on the flip side too, you know. Not so much just falling in love with them, but, you know, don't get down on a player either, you know, too fast.
No, this, because everybody develops at a different, you know, a different rate. As long as you can see, you know, how they're going about their business, or, you know, how they're, like we talked about, you know, the fastball, maybe they're just missing it a tick. It's a little timing issue, but you can see that it's there. And it may take a little longer, where he's more a level-to-level guy than someone else, but you do see it, and you see the wit and grit in that individual, you know, and when your eyes tell you a lot, you know, they tell a story real quick. And when you see that in players, you can't give up on them, and you got to stay positive. This is, you know, the minor league, you have to maintain a positive environment. I mean, there's times when you may have to redirect someone, but, you know, you do it privately, you do it without any emotions, and you may feel like he's able to accomplish what you're talking about. It's real important that he doesn't feel like, man, I don't know if I can do that. So you really got to pay attention to your wording, in when you're directing or, teaching someone.
Wow. I mean, you look at where you started in George Horton, Dave Snow,
Mm-hmm.
Augie Garrido. I mean, three of the most iconic, I think, coaches on the West Coast that have come out and taught college baseball at the foundation, taking these elite athletes. Dave Snow and I, we ran around together when I was scouting with the Rockies. He recruited me in high school. All three of those guys did. Just amazing, like, foundation to be able to, and then Tom Kelly, and then you played with Hurdle and all these guys. So, you take today's player that is, like my son Dylan, aspiring athlete. He's going to his junior year. You got all this pressure on showcases and, being a show pony and make sure that your raw velocity numbers are up and your exit velo is up and your launch angles are correct. But like Mike was saying, there's not a lot of time for gameplay or practice to then play hard. And we had Denny Hawking on last week, and Denny was talking about how the guys that are so routine driven right now, the Harpers, the Pujols, the Trouts, those guys are doing okay at the big league level in all this COVID stuff, no fans in the stands, but their routine is what has gotten them to where they are and is keeping them in the light. What's your advice to young athletes right now, in high school? Some, may play fall ball, may not. How do they find that routine? Because we talk about have a routine, but what is that routine at that young level, for these aspiring college pro players?
Well, first of all, I know the game has changed, from when I played, and I know there's all these different activities going on. I wish we would play more games. Unfortunately, I think the games are the best teacher for the most part. But I think, everybody, let's say the physical part of the swing, I'm leery that there's too much cloning with these kids. I think everybody's a little different. I think everybody has a little matter of style, how they approach it. And then the job is to find out where they're at in what works for him to benefit him. I don't think everybody needs, there's guys that like tee work. There's guys that like certain drills. I'm a big fan of the machine. I wish everybody would use machines. I just believe the more you can use velocity, the better. I think even in little leagues and stuff, just use the machine as much as possible. Because I think that's where you find the swing more. The kid finds his ability to use his swing properly is using machines. I really do. We started probably 5 years ago. Mike, I know it wasn't big when we played in the 80s, but lately we use them all the time. And I think the development of a hitter professionally has improved because of using the machine. I really do. We have our drill work, whatever that, cross toss, high tee, whatever those drills are, short bat, bat path drills, how to get on plane. We have all that. We have a tire drill for bounce. We got all sorts of stuff. But it goes back to being able to hit the fastball. And I think if kids and their travel teams focus more on hitting number one, they will improve their swing and will be able to adjust to number two. I think if more travel teams and all those high schools focus on working and disciplining a kid in his approach on how to hit the fastball, he'll be in more consistent position to hit. I really believe that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, you hit on so many things right there. So just going back to the playing more games. I was a coordinator for a long time. We ran, we were right across the street, when I was with Texas and you were in Seattle, Seattle with Kansas City, and we would run, our pass would run across. But I remember we would always talk about that the game was the most important thing that happened that particular day. So in the minor leagues, when you're going through the minor leagues, those games, that's your practice. Like that is practice. What's happening today is we're starting to see the trend of, you know, really valuing practice, and we'll get into preparation, all this other stuff, which is unbelievably important. But, you know, that game in the minor leagues, they're trying to design practices so they're closer to being game-like. The games are practice, you know? And you're going to practice, most kids are going to practice about 500 times before they go to the big leagues. The good ones are going to practice less. The other guys have to practice a little bit more, but you basically get four seasons before you get there to play, you know, your 140, 150 games, and you're practicing against another team every night. And it's the most realistic thing that possibly happens, you know, and some nights you practice well and some nights you don't, you know, but that's essentially what's happening in minor league baseball. You talk about the machines and stuff. You know, I talk about it with kids all the time. Baseball is the only sport where everything that we do is so slow until 7 o'clock hits or game time hits. And then they step in the batter's box, and now we're going to expect them to hit 93 miles an hour on the first pitch, you know, where if you look back, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago where the Giants were the best fastball hitting team, like in the big leagues, on velocity that was 93 plus. And what they were doing is every big league hitter was going into the cage right before the game, and some would swing at it and some would just train their eyes, but they're just seeing the velocity. And I don't understand, like, you talk of kids don't like hitting the machine. Yeah, because it's hard. You know? But if you can sit on a fastball and be ready to hit a fastball, I mean, you can, I told kids, I was with a 16-year-old select team this summer, and I told every single one of my players, I said, I'm telling you right now, if you could just recognize the off-speed pitch and don't swing at it all summer long, you will have a great summer. Like, just, they can't throw it for strikes. They can't consistently throw it for strikes. Don't worry about it and just hunt your fastball. Amazing how many good Todd, amazing how many good counts we got into. It was amazing how many times we walked. And we were amazed. It was amazing, you know, how many situations we got into just because we can control the at-bat.
You know, that's one thing, everybody, you talk about that, the fastball, it actually helps slumps. When you're not feeling good or you're struggling, just go back to hitting number one. You know, go back to hitting the fastball. It takes you, if he can drop 2 curveballs over for strikes, you know, in AA, AAA, or the big leagues, okay, now you have recall right there. You know what it does. You know where the break is, you know, and how often does that even happen? You know, you got to be in a position, to me, at any level, to hit the fastball. You know, even if that guy throws in college or high school, the numbers show he throws 65% breaking balls. You're going to get a fastball in a bat. Just don't miss it. Learn not to miss it. Yeah. That's how you learn.
Yeah.
But you learn a lot by taking the breaking ball over time, and you see enough in your development to know which ones you can handle and which ones you can't as you grow and develop in this game.
Absolutely.
I think you learn too, you know, coming from a scout's perspective, when I was scouting and you go out and you see these amateur players play, you're looking for those guys that can attack the fastball, and those guys that let that 0-0 fastball go by. You know, maybe they spit on a breaking ball, and then all of a sudden there's that, you know, 0-1 fastball that is just off the plate a little bit, but that's the only cookie you're going to get in that entire sequence, especially you're facing D1 guys that can spin the ball a little bit. High school is a little different, but, you know, I'll go out in Dylan's team or just watching amateur baseball, and there's too many kids that are almost sitting breaking ball instead of gearing up in those fastball counts, you know, 0-0, 0-1, 0-2. I mean, Mike and Andre, you guys were talking about it earlier, and the approach to that fastball. What's kind of, you know, when you're watching minor league guys come in, especially where you're at in extended spring, you got guys from all over the world coming in with all kinds of different mental approaches. What's your kind of your coaching theory on teaching young prospects the approach to hitting the fastball first 2 strikes? how do you kind of go through that with those guys?
Well, nowadays, when you get all sorts of reports in now, and the big thing nowadays is the elevated fastball. You hear it all the time. That's more, maybe for a full season guys, a little bit more advanced, that you can work on the elevated fastball. We still work at it with the young kids, but basically for us in our development, in our players, is we have to be ready to hit number one. We have to be able to do damage with the fastball. That hasn't changed. And I don't think, for me, and I can attest for a lot of people, you get to the big leagues hitting the fastball. You never get to the big leagues. Someone says, oh, he's good at hitting a breaking ball. You hit the mistake one. You're good enough to fight off that tough one with 2 strikes, but it goes back. All that takes place because mentally you're thinking, number one. Your success comes in this game from one. And I do understand what you're talking about, college baseball and all the breaking balls and things like that, some college players get drafted, and it would be interesting to see the stat, how many of them right away can handle a major league average fastball, because you're getting 18, 19-year-old or a 17-and-a-half-year-old Latin American kid who can throw a 95. He might not, as he's learning command in a secondary pitch, and he might even already have it. But, when you're seeing loop, 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 and then all of a sudden now we're getting velocity, and they start learning to command that fastball, you have to be able to hit it.
Well, this is where
the tough transition.
Yeah.
Where the disconnect is happening, though, too, when you really think about, today's showcase player. Pitchers are gearing up to light up the gun. We had over 100 players this year in Perfect Game that are on their stat leaderboard that are incoming seniors throwing over 93, 100. Back when I played, we had maybe a handful of guys that could throw over 93 across the country. So it's totally evolved, where these guys are now going through all these velocity trainings. You got and some great coaches teaching, body sequencing and, more hip coil, going back to the old school way of pitching and making sure you're driving with the front side and staying closed, using your whole body. Now they've got different terminology to it, but pitchers are trying to throw hard to light the gun up. Hitters, though, are so careful in trying to be so selective that they're almost waiting for breaking balls. So it's complete opposite. But those good ones you see, those guys are attacking. And those are the guys that you stay and watch as a scout.
For me, that's what I think that's where the disconnect comes in, because you get a lot of hitters just trying to cover all the pitches, and they don't really have a plan when they get into the batter's box. There's no real approach. There's no real understanding of how to control the strike zone or manage the at-bat and find them way to get to a good count. And they wind up trying to cover the breaking ball and kind of cover the fastball, and they kind of get caught in between. They're not hitting either pitch. They're kind of late on the fastball. They're a little bit out in front of the breaking ball. But the one thing is they go home, they didn't really look stupid. They didn't chase anything really in the dirt, right? And didn't have a wild swing or whatever, but they're 0 for 4, and they didn't really hit anything hard either,
Yeah,
And the good ones, they sell out. They sell out on their plan, and they're going to look stupid every once in a while, And I watch it in the big leagues every single night from the greatest hitters. They'll chase a breaking ball in the dirt.
Yeah.
They just didn't read it, and they just didn't pick it up early enough or see spin, or it was a really good one. But you know what? The fastball doesn't get by them. They are hunting their pitch. They're trying to do damage early in the count. They're not sitting there trying to be protective or do whatever. And they just have that mindset. And it goes back to, if you're thinking the right things and you have a good plan in the box, it's amazing how your swing will kind of follow what your mind's telling it to do.
Absolutely. We talked about this earlier. I really believe your swing follows your mind. And the simpler you keep things between the ears, the better off you're going to be. Like you said, you're a pitch behind when you start thinking you got to cover every pitch.
Oh yeah.
You can't have success. You may be good. We don't want hitters that have 2 good games and 5 that we don't know what's going on. We want guys that are going to have 5 good games maybe they're off for a game or two, or the pitcher had a great night. You got to give them credit at the same time, and then get back on the horse, so we got to turn that flip. And a lot of it is more the mindset.
Yeah.
Trusting the simpler things in this game. And when you do that, all those things take care, launch angle, doing damage, exit, they'll take care of themselves as long as you're focusing on the the fastball and making the adjustment accordingly. Simple. The way you simplify things, you see things better, you're breathing better at the plate, you're more relaxed. You just deal with things a lot better when you simplify.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Andre, I had the pleasure of throwing batting practice to a bunch of guys that are in the big leagues now with Kansas City. And you talk about how players all develop at a different pace. Some develop and some process information really well. Some need to keep it unbelievably simple. Some can be more complicated with it. Some can retain information, a lot of information. Some can't retain a lot of information, all that stuff. So tell me a little bit about your experiences with Hunter Dozier, #1 pick, came in, was unbelievable athlete, and it didn't really go all that great for him right out of the gate.
He he was our #1 pick, and he started off pretty good, but then he struggled. Great athlete, 6'3", 6'4", solid, 220. I mean, what an athlete, can move a little bit. But he was one of those guys that went level to level, #1. But he struggled with some mechanical issues. He really did. And he didn't buy into the fastball machine right away. And he had his drills that he liked. And, in our organization, every player has certain things that really connect with them. And we don't disturb that. That's part of their plan and approach. And if they feel good doing something, that's important.
Yeah.
We may add a little, here and there through talks and drills, but whatever they feel comfortable with, they do is important. But we got to a point where, every hitting coach he had, we were seeing the same things, and he wasn't buying into the machine. And in 2000, toward the end of 17 or 18, talking to Terry Bradshaw, who's our major league hitting coach, great guy, does a fabulous job. Not just the swing, but the mental approach. He's really, you probably know Terry, dynamic guy. I mean, you love him to death, man. I think you and me could come out of retirement and hit just listening to him talk, because he's he makes you just believe you can do whatever you want. He's a fascinating guy. But
Can he teach you how to hit, though?
Huh?
Can he teach you how to hit?
Yeah. Yes, he can.
I told him when he played, his bat was allergic to leather. But so Terry talked to him and convinced him about, look, we want to iron out this swing. We need velocity. This is a great example. And he got discouraged, but he stuck with it. And he was real resilient about getting through this, because he knew it would help. He hit kind of a wall. And I think a credit to us in the minor leagues, in our front office, the patience to find the timing to address it was really important.
Right.
And we found that opportunity. And that's another thing, the timing with certain guys, say, okay, now's the time. We have enough info. We got enough, we can sit down and talk. And he was open-minded, and he ran with it and had the courage to do it. Once he got out of the machine, that swing flattened out. It was shorter,
It
more
just eliminates a lot of moves.
Less movement, pitch recognition was better. He wasn't afraid to go. He would rather be 0-1 than 0 for 1 in the beginning, instead of just whatever.
Right.
But it just all came together because of the machine. That was, and the way we handled it in the conversations with him. Those were the two major things.
Timing is so important. I mean,
Yeah.
if your timing is off, really hard to get players to buy into what you're trying to do. But it does, and it takes time to develop that relationship, and it takes time to have enough information to be able to lay it out in front of them. Like, okay, this is what we're seeing. It's kind of what's going on. What are we going to do to
And I think
address it?
at our level, Mike, and you know this, and Bly, you know, the younger levels, it's learning how to hit. It's not about the power.
Ugh.
It's about numbers and batting average. It's about understanding what you need to do every day and work with that. The numbers come as a result of the process. You know, in our, you know, I know it's different in the amateur side, but for us in pro ball, it's real important to let them know what it takes to play every single day and to get them through those days as well. But learning how to hit goes a long way, because then they can be their own teacher one day. They can, you know, understand what's going on.
That's a great point. And you know, I mean, in today's game, you have technology tools that are affordable to the common families. I mean, you got the pocket radars, smart coaches, and you got the radar devices, and training with radar has become so important and accessible to, you know, most families in the country or even in the world, where you got, you know, bring your radar out, track your velocity readings between your fastball, your changeup, learn how to throw hard. I mean, you got this device, even when if you're on rehab and coaches are saying, hey, or your trainers, I want you throwing 70%. Well, if you know what your baseline is, you can actually track what that 70% is just through say a pocket radar device. And then hitting wise, I've learned so much on this call right here, and it takes you back to the way the game was played, where it's all about hitting the fastball. And it's so refreshing to hear you guys talk about that. Being a dad and giving advice to my son that wants to be, you know, a big league player one day, and all the players that are going to be listening to this and the coaches. But there's so many great tools that you can get out, but get in the cage, use the machine, go to guys like Mike and yourself and learn how to hit the fastball. It's so important. So
you know what happens too, Todd and AD, that the kids that actually watch games or sit down and actually will watch the game and enjoy baseball, they listen to a lot of these big leaguers talk about the highlights and the interviews after games, and they talk about their at-bats, and they'll hear certain things and they don't really know what's going on. Because I've talked to a bunch of like 16 and 17-year-olds that are coming into the facility about like, why are you doing what you're doing? And they'll talk about like, oh, well, you know, George Springer was talking about how, you know, he was sitting on that breaking ball 2-1 and this and that. And, you know, and I'm like, do you understand the amount of information that they have up there, that they know this reliever with a man on second base in this inning, in this count, will throw this pitch 89% of the time, and that's why they do what they do. They're not just they're guessing. They have like, it's unbelievable type of information. But I also know, you know, these guys sit on heaters all the time. You know, and that's what they're trying to hit all the time.
And they're looking,
you can't be ready to hit. Like, you have to get your body in position to hit the fastest thing you're going to see, and then you can adjust to the other stuff. It doesn't work the other way around.
Yeah, those guys have got, you know, 2,000 bats under their belt in the minor leagues. They've got, you know, the information, the advanced reports. But if you take those individuals, whoever you want in the big leagues, and bring them back to when they were a youth, they hit the fastball.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. You know, the combination of, you know, your strength and conditioning programs today, you know, your science department and player development, you know, we work together, and it's a fabulous unit we have here with the Royals. And the game's changing, but we still stay with the fundamental perspectives of each, you know, part of the development, you know, or the strength and conditioning, you know, or the analytics. We're all working together, but not, you know, one outweighs the other. It's there's synergy there, you know, if that's the right word, you know. So it's great if a strength and conditioning coach can come to us and say, hey, you know, something's up with his lower half or whatever. We're more aware. We're seeing something too. Hey, great. There's a connection, you know.
Yeah.
There's a common denominator. But
Without a doubt.
it still goes back to being in a position to recognize, you know, velocity. And that starts when you're in the dugout. That starts when you're on deck. You got to get the best timing off his best fastball.
Oh,
Because your body remembers what it does last.
I told Mike
that,
this year, young 16-year-old kids, I am tired of you guys like jogging to the on deck circle. You should be 4 deep, helmet on, gloves on, like caged lion in there watching the pitcher and ready to go. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm on deck. Where's my stuff? I'm like, how's that possible? Like you got to be ready to go. You got to pay attention in the dugout. You got to be ready in the on-deck circle. You have to have some sort of routine. I mean, the pitcher's going to tell you what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Those are the
good thing off the machine, if kids learn to use it, is when they strike the ball, they should say to themselves, was I on it? Was I over it? Or was I under it?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're on it and doing damage, your timing's good and everything else. You know, just was I on it? Was I over it? You know?
Yeah.
And just line drives. Just think line drives do damage.
You're on time. You catch the ball out in front. If you catch the ball out in front, it goes in the air.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like I had 1,230 yards of BP today. Just keep a good mental gap-to-gap approach. Use the big part of the field, you know. If your shortstop's 5'11" and your second baseman's 5'10", I'm going to hit a line drive over their head. Just visualize. When you visualize and think things like that, your body will follow.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what kids need to do, and that dress rehearsal every single day. You'd be surprised how thinking right and simplifying the thinking, they'll, be more efficient and effective. They might not get hits, but they surely can be satisfied with the approach they took that day.
Yeah. And you talked about it, Todd, too, that, I say it all the time. It's the separator.
Yeah.
What happens? It's definitely the mental game is definitely the separator. Everybody's got talent, especially at that level. It's unbelievable the amount of talent that walks through the door. But the guys that are good here, are just really separate themselves. But it's that way. It should be that way at every single level, because at some point, every kid's, team's got talent. I know your son at that high school there, they were loaded, and too bad COVID hit, because that Reedy high school team here in Frisco, Texas was going to be a powerhouse. And they had pitching, they had hitting, and the separator, for some of those kids is just, some of them are just really physical. And I've had the pleasure of seeing some of those guys walk into the facility and do some work with them. But you can see, like, not a real plan when they stepped in the batter's box, not a real approach to what they were trying to do. So it's definitely the separator.
I think it's good for young kids to have challenges, those coaches out there with them. How many line drives you can hit. Have competition within your competition, your team. The more you can get them in that gear, that's close to game time, like the fastball machine, but challenge them with the fastball machine. You got 10 swings. How many line drives can you hit? Or, whatever. You can play situational. You can play a 3-inning game. You got to stimulate their minds instead of just, okay, here's tee work and here's short screen overhand and be done. Line the machine up off center and do some fastball cross toss, or angle toss, whatever term you want to use. I mean, there's ways to challenge them that will help them, like you say, at 7 o'clock.
It teaches them how to win. Kids, they get to that level, man. They want to compete. They want to win at everything they're doing, whether it's a pickup basketball game or this. The more you can get those guys internally as a team competing, and having some sort of like fun competition, in practice, it's amazing how much they'll compete. Like, when the
Oh,
game.
yeah. Give them a reward system, whatever, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The winner goes home with a large pizza. I don't know, you know, whatever. In your case, you can send them to Fogo de Chao or something.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Andre, want to thank you so much for being on the show. This was, I think, one of the top shows we've done in terms of player development, really talking the game. This is so great for those young hitters, any coaches that are going to watch this and just really learn about the art of hitting and taking it back to the basics. We got to mention your daughter just had a baby. Congratulations.
Yeah, grandson. Little scary, you know, she tested positive for COVID, but we found out it was a false positive, but we all had to get tested. So it was a scare a couple of weeks ago. You realize it's close to home to a certain degree, and thank God we got through it. But, you know, it's some tough times. And I think the key for us in pro ball, for you guys, for the amateurs out there, for coaches, is it's really important to keep the morale up of the players. Find ways to keep the morale up. You know, send video to each other, communicate. Mike, you and Bly, and I know your dad real well. And I'll tell you what, no one's going to no one got there trying to hit his breaking ball. I'll tell you what. Good luck with that. But
you're not kidding.
You know, what you guys are doing out there is wonderful. And you guys are class guys. And I want to share that. You have integrity, you're authentic. And it was a pleasure being on your show, both of you.
We're going to have you back on. So Mike and I were talking about doing an alumni show, and now you're an alumni. So you get to come back on the show and have some fun.
I'm all for it. I'll do anything for you guys. You know, you guys are good people, and you're very trustworthy.
Wow. We feel the same about you, and that's what makes this game so great. The fraternity of brotherhood. You know, I think when you really appreciate all the hardships we've all gone through in the game itself, whether it was on the field or in that draft room or in that manager's meetings or working with those players, we've all dealt with a lot of the same adversities, and so it's good to have a community of good people we can all rely on. And, you know, it was awesome having you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Be safe.
Thanks, AD. Stay well.
All right.
Great talking to you.
Take care, guys.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Wow, what a great guest to have, just talking hitting with you. And as a pitcher, I just, sitting there, just love the conversation on the fastball. So what were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's just, Andre and I have had that conversation a couple times, over the years. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you see, I think you guys are more and more breaking ball, trying to throw more breaking balls, and the percentages are changing a little bit. But if you can't hit a fastball, you can't do anything. And it all kind of works off of that. I just think for young hitters, amateurs, youth players, high school players, guys that are just maybe going to college or whatever. And that's where it starts, and you got to start developing a plan. I just loved how he was really locked into the mind and talking about, having a plan and having an approach and, competition and just understanding how many swings it takes. And just, you could talk about it all day long.
Well, I think, and then, when you really kind of, you simplify it, it's those players that have a plan somewhat are those, they're light years ahead of those when you're watching them all play together on the same field. You can pick them out. Like they just stand out.
It looks so different, especially in the batter's box. The batter's box, I think, and on the mound. You can kind of see it everywhere, but those two spots, the pitcher that really kind of has an idea what he's doing out there and the pitchability that we talk about at times, and you just look at there and you're like, wow, the team has no chance. He's always pitches ahead of them of what they're trying to do. And then on the flip side, you talk about the hitting and what they're trying to do there. Like the guys that have a plan in the box, for me, they always look so calm.
Yeah.
The takes are calm. They're on time. The swings are they're never out of balance. They're on every single thing. They don't seem to get fooled. It's like they're playing in slow motion. And you just see that and it just stands out. And you could tell it's not always just about being having the skills and the talent, but it's having the right approach and having a plan and knowing how to execute it.
Yeah. And, I think there's, like I was mentioning in the podcast, there's just a great amount of tools out there now, and it can get really confusing on what you really need to use. But to get out and hit off the machine, get live BP, all of that is really important. Get your tee work in, get your bullpens in. But I always ended my bullpens with throwing as hard as I could the last 5 pitches. I didn't care where it went because I just wanted to throw hard. I wanted to get that shoulder activated, get myself ready for, like you said, get yourself ready for 7 p.m. If I'm hitting, I want to go beast mode for, sorry, Lynch, for calling out the trademark of beast mode. But I want to go animal style, and really swing the bat fast. And there's tools out there like the pocket radar device. I keep bringing that up just because it's affordable. It's easy to use.
Yeah.
And track your measurements. And if you can kind of build that into your routine now and start to understand where you are in your game and as you're working hard and your strength and you're working with guys like you and defining and honing in on your skill, you've got these measurements that you can follow along and track your journey with. So,
well, I think blast motion is another affordable thing that's pretty good at something like that.
Awesome.
Rapsodo's a little bit more expensive, but it gives you more readings. Yeah, it's a lot more expensive, but it gives you some readings. But on the flip side, I think you hit it best. And I've done it even with young players. Like, I want you getting to the point where you're almost over swinging, or like, I got to see what 100%, we got to know what 100% is so we can figure out, because most players play best at like 85, 90%, they're really in that range, but how do you know what 90% is until you know what 100% is? That's
right. Yeah.
And then you got to get in there and the whole, throwing it as hard as you can, or, it puts your body in the right position to be able to do those things,
Right. Yeah.
So it's very important. What a great show.
Great show. Great thing to, really kind of start the week off with and get things moving. And
for kids, to go into the fall, gives them a plan to work into the fall. Hey, I'm going into fall ball now. I'm going to just hunt fastballs.
Yep. No, hunt fastballs. Mike Micucci. I'm going to put it on my website. Hunting fastballs. Mike Micucci. Yeah. You see, I got Denny Hawking's quote on there. So
I saw it. Yeah, I know. That's a definite.
I'm putting that up there. Hunting fastballs.
Yeah, that's a T-shirt. That's another T-shirt.
Yeah. All right, brother. Hey,
all right.
Be good. Be safe.
Have a good one.